try that again. Hey, I'm Bob Cooney. We're live. Hopefully you can hear us all. I'm going to start again. We've got a great panel of investors. Ryan, you want to go ahead and give that intro again? Second time. You'll have it perfect now because you had a dry run.
Sure. Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me here, Bob, and great to meet everyone. So my name is Ryan Wang. I'm the founding partner with Outpost Capital. We are a Bay Area-based venture fund focused on frontier technology investment. So we invest in VR, AR, spatial computing. We also invest in blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotics, and digital entertainment as well. So in the world of VR, AR, we have invested in the whole ecosystem. We have invested in software companies, hardware companies, infrastructure, developer tools, social platforms, pretty much cover the whole ecosystem. And great to share some of my thinking about the industry here today, and great to have some of my most knowledgeable friends here on the show as well.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. We'll dive a little bit into your background too, because I know you've done some interesting, really early stage work. And Pearly's back. Awesome. We've got the whole gang here.
Hello.
Martina, do you want to? Let's try again. Quick introduction.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Martina Welkhoff. I'm a founding managing partner at the WXR Fund. We invest in women-led spatial computing companies. So we have a gender lens to our investment thesis, and we want to help ensure that women are a big part of this next computing paradigm and help us all to lead the way. And we started with an accelerator first a couple of years back. We've had 26 companies go through that. And then we just a few months ago launched the fund itself and made our first 2 investments out of the fund. And similarly to Ryan, we're sector agnostic. We work across a lot of different sectors. We do not do hardware, however, but we are always excited about companies in entertainment, healthcare, education, all sorts of fun things that we can get into.
All right, cool. So, Angelo, was that an espresso? I'm jealous.
I'm sorry. I usually bring espresso to people I've learned to meetings, but I can't do it. Pandemic. Post-pandemic, I promise. Hi, everybody. I'm Angelo. I'm a partner who founded HP Tech Ventures 4 years ago as of last month. I focus on AR/VR, but also AI and data science and gaming and esports, and I love it when they all intersect. Last year, I did 4 investments in the AR/VR space. Hardware is fine with HP. Software is also good, and anything in between, really, just looking for opportunities to make money and help folks. We're a little bit focused on the enterprise/commercial than the consumer use cases right now, particularly around like bioanalytics and commercial training, but also like education and healthcare are super interesting to us.
Cool, thanks. And last but definitely not least, Pearly Chen from HTC.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pearly from HTC. I run our VIVEX Accelerator Investment Program, our $100 million commitment of strategic investment, balance sheet investing into the XR space. We started about 3-4 years ago now, having invested in more than 100 companies globally. Our investment thesis is for the rising tide to lift all boats, to invest in the ecosystem broad and deep. We've invested globally. We have charters all around the world. We continue to actively look for investments that will move the needles in helping accelerate XR adoption. I also run our partnership and this business development for Vipor, our content service. Hence, I also invest in content projects as it relates to consumer. So wearing different investor hats in companies' equity investment as well as content project investing.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for that, and thanks to everybody again for joining. So, I want to stay with Pearly and Angelo for a second because you guys are representing enterprise, an enterprise investment, which tends to have a bit of a strategic lens. How do you guys, when you're looking at investments, how do you apply, the strategic lens of the business onto your kind of evaluation framework?
Pearly, do you want to go first?
Sure. We definitely take a corporate strategic lens when looking at investments. We see VIVEX and working with startup and amazing teams as an extension of our innovation arm. So we're really learning from what the streamers and founders are doing out there and trying to see whether opportunities for us to help them commercialize, help or take from their learnings and what they're doing to enhance our products, services, and portfolios. So the strategic fit needs to be there. This is not a separate fund. It has no LPs. It's not a financial investor. It's more of a what strategic value can we bring to the companies and the founders we work with, and how can their solutions help enhance some of the things we're trying to achieve in this space.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. We view it pretty similarly in terms of we're looking to invest and also partner with companies that are complementary to HP. So we do some of the investments, but then also the partnerships are with companies that aren't even in our portfolio. So, I talked to like the head of the VR business unit, which is, I don't know how many at this point, 100 plus people, and understand what they see as their roadmap and areas they kind of want to lean into more. And then we go out and find complementary companies.
Yeah, interesting. Now, Ryan, you got your start. You were invested heavily in China, right, in the very early days of VR there. And what was that like, and how, if and how that's evolved since then?
Yeah, I think the ecosystem in China is very different from the ecosystem here in the US. And one of the most important difference that's impacting the early stage startup is that in China, government has a very strong leadership position in where the technology is going to and what kind of resource is available to these emerging technologies, right? So in China, speak for right now, one of the most important strategic technology milestone is actually the evolution of 5G, right? So the government is pushing 5G technologies to the consumers through telecom companies, right? So China Telecom and some other major Chinese telecom companies are pushing the 5G technology, and to VR/AR specifically, that means that after 5G is available to consumers, they need to look for applications and use cases where they find 5G useful. In terms of just watching videos or playing games or getting things done on your mobile platform, 4G is good enough, right? So what's the use of 5G? So I think moving ahead, VR/AR could play a huge part into filling the gap of the use case and applications of 5G, and I think that's very aligned to what the government want, and that's where most of the resource will be available to the startups, especially in China.
Yeah, interesting.
And also HTC have been doing a lot of ecosystem building around VR/AR industry in China. So maybe Pearly, you can comment on that a little bit.
China is a very unique market, clearly. It's very policy-driven, very long-term strategic planning, top-down, as Ryan mentioned. So working in China involves a lot with heavily government relationships and government engagement, where we're seeing interesting momentum in the education space. We have a subsidiary working specifically to push VR solutions with educational content into campuses. You would imagine how difficult and fragmented a similar effort would be for the US. Whereas in China, it's a much more straightforward. You talk to a group of principals, you do that type of top-down sale pretty easily. So, and government is also extremely supportive. We have collaborated with the government in hosting World VR forums of massive city scales, various kinds, as well as partnering in investments to bring global investments to China. So there are various ways that we're working with the government to accelerate the investment and ecosystem fostering inside China.
Yeah, interesting. Now, Martina, I want to talk a little bit just the lens, the woman lens, the female lens that you look at from an investment standpoint. Talk a little bit about the why of that for people who might not understand it.
Yeah, so some people may or may not realize that women-led companies are very underinvested in overall in venture capital. Depending on the way that you slice and dice the data, you can sometimes see between 2 and 10% of venture dollars. In XR, it's actually, the numbers are closer to 17, 18%. And that's companies that are led by women and men oftentimes. It's not that we're looking for exclusively women, it's that we want to see women on the founding leadership team. And the reason for that is those companies tend to outperform. Gender diverse companies and more diversity in general tend to build better products and ultimately have stronger businesses. So it's fundamentally an economic thesis, as well as, for me personally, I'm a former entrepreneur. I founded a couple of companies before moving into the investor space. And so I experienced firsthand what it's like to be a female founder and some of the inherent challenges therein. And so it was a personal mission for me and the community that's coalesced around this to make sure that women founders are well-resourced and have a strong community to step into when they're building their companies.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. So let's stay with you since we're there. What sectors are you within XR now? What sectors or segments are you kind of most excited about? And how has that changed really with the pandemic?
Well, even prior to the pandemic, healthcare was one of the things I was most excited about, and both on the training side and diagnostics and therapeutics. And that's certainly only increased both my interest in the area as well as the activity that we're seeing and the urgency with which customers are seeking out these solutions. So, on the training side, one of the companies I've invested in is Conquer Experience, and they're building immersive training for perioperative nurses. And prior to this, they were getting traction with hospitals. They were, a lot of interest in the system. But now there's an urgent need because a lot of these nurses have no other way to train. This is now, unfortunately, given the circumstances that we're in, the only option. So we're seeing spaces like that really heat up. Another example is one of our portfolio companies, Embodied Labs, is immersive training for caregivers, and they're in hospice and nursing home settings. And of course, we've all read some very sad headlines about nursing homes in the last few weeks. And so they're providing really, really critical service right now to those caregivers and getting that information into their hands. On the therapeutic side, there's some really exciting stuff happening. A lot of it in mental health, which again is a big area of interest right now. We recently hosted a forum with Sarah Hill from Helium and a few other founders and mental health experts on how they're using VR AR to help people with daily stress management all the way up to full-blown PTSD and some really serious issues. So there's a lot that's possible there, and because you have the immersive environment and the way that the brain responds differently and just how much more you can do with that versus a 2D interface, it can just be a really, really powerful tool for alleviating some mental health issues. It also, of course, is a very vulnerable user experience, so you have to be careful there and really make sure that whatever product you're building is protecting the user fundamentally and coming from a place of strong ethical position in how you're building that out.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's a challenge too, because understanding the impact of this stuff, it's so new and there's no research,
right,
to go along with it, and people are kind of making it up as they go along. And yeah. So, Angelo, what about you? What sectors are you excited about now, and how has that maybe changed?
It's similar to Martina, maybe, in terms of we're really looking at commercial VR training as this great space that we're, believers in. Because actually, Bob, I disagree a little bit, just to make it more fun. I think there's there's a lot more efficacy data than there was a few years ago about VR. And there's some of it is misapplied and it's just VR for VR's sake. But just like looking at surgeons, looking at pre-op, looking at, people, medical students doing, work on cadavers, it's amazing how much better you can be at something if you get to do it in this immersive experience. I still kind of bummed I didn't understand chemistry quite as well as I would have liked to, other than with VR now. I'm like, oh, I can definitely learn. So I need to take some chemistry courses. So I think, so training applies everything to the construction worker, right? He or she can't get the training, but they have to have their safety training. So let's do it with, a company that we invested in called Pixo, or someone on healthcare with periopsin. Like, this stuff is fantastic. And now it's, all this stuff, telehealth, is happening because it has to. And I'm hoping, it sticks. And I think it will stick if, this lasts long enough and people get the efficacy data. And just like, why do we need to go back to the way it was?
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan, you want to take a jab at that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I previously mentioned, we at Outpost, we have invested in the whole ecosystem. And I think, with this pandemic thing going on, right, it actually opened the door to a lot of new opportunities. So, I definitely strongly agree with what Martina and Angelo just mentioned, that VR training could be very effective in a lot of industrial and enterprise use cases. And, for a few years, some of the most successful companies in that space, especially in terms of revenue making capabilities, right? There are a lot of companies that's providing training and education solutions to enterprise and industries that come from that sector. Most recently, what I'm mostly interested in, and I think is some of the new behavior change that introduced by the pandemic situation, is what I call as a digital lifestyle, right? So, before the pandemic, people use all the digital products as tools, right? So the digital products are valuable because of their utility value, right? But now, because of pandemic, people start to do everything digitally and live 100% digitized lifestyle, right? So we do collaborations digitally. We do, we get things done digitally. We communicate with each other. We do socialize with each other digitally, and we even, exercise digitally, right? So, the world has shifted people's behavior through that path. And if we think about, the long-term vision behind the whole XR industry, is actually to introduce a digital lifestyle to the mainstream people, right? Not only to people in the XR industry, but to the mainstream people. And I think, that transformation that we have been hoping for such a long time had not happened until today. Because of the pandemic, people are forced into these situations, and that is what I'm mostly excited about. Yeah. So, in the past 2-3 months, I'm looking to a lot of deals coming from the digital lifestyle type of angle, and when I work with my portfolio companies, so I have portfolio companies like the VR, which is bringing live events and concert experience in the digital way, right? In VR, AR, and also in the video game platform. So I think these kind of products really have a very unique opportunity to shine at this time.
Yeah, fascinating. Pearly, now you guys have, I want you to take that same question, but then also maybe touch on what you're doing, because you just had the developer conference in Engage, and I think you guys have done a partnership with them now around remote collaboration. And so maybe talk about segments that you see that you're excited about now and how that's changed, and maybe touch on the Engage relationship.
Sure, absolutely. I also echo with Ryan in welcoming the accelerated coming of age of the metaverse. When a few weeks into this shelter-in-place lifestyle, when I realized that the food delivery, the person would run away faster than I can get to the door, it really reminds me of what the life in Ready Player One looks like. We're living in a fully digitized way. It's a fully accelerated adoption of digital lifestyle. Everything can be digitized and can be interacted digitally, and that's also sort of the background of how we started to think. The premise of virtual reality is to democratize people's access to experiences, to shared experiences, to bring people closer together. And so we've been investing in various areas of how to bring that to life, including all that Angelo and Martina has mentioned in the healthcare training, experiential side of things. But with this new normal, definitely virtual collaboration has come under the spotlight even more. So be it the design engineering collaboration, three-dimensional collaboration, and discovery and R&D process in every kind of industry, to AEC, to medical innovation, all kinds of different ways that people are collaborating, working, and becoming more productive. Inside VR, that's definitely coming more so under the spotlight. And on the virtual collaboration and conferencing side of things, VR also provides that second best option after actually being physically together. And that's where we were possibly surprised as well after that Vive developer ecosystem, which we traditionally annually hosted in person with thousands of participants. We were able to do that virtually inside Engage, the VR conferencing platform, with more than 2,500 people participating throughout the day, represented by their photorealistic avatars, interacting in keynote panels, one-to-one meetings, and even the hallway coffee and bar conversations as if they would in real life, which we cannot do anymore. And that's also very interesting. And we announced the open beta release of our Vive Sync product that allows our own teams to collaborate inside VR to make us feel more connected in our daily work. And all of this is just signifying a trend, including what investments we're looking at across the board to bring that to life, to make it easier for individuals and companies to have easy access and solutions to use virtual reality as a way of being productive, being connected, and frankly living a happier, more connected life. Looking from here, I think a lot of things looking into next year, we'll start to think, can this be done digitally? Is there a reason to really do this physically? And that's where I think VR technology that we're all taking a part of can play a very key role.
Yeah, it's interesting. Twitter, Jack Dorsey just announced today that he said his employees can work from home permanently now if they want, provided the job can be done remotely from work. And so we're seeing this massive shift of CEOs and CFOs saying, wait a second, all that office space, I think we spend $800 billion a year in the US alone, with office space for rent for office space workers. And so what's happening in that space in kind of the remote work area? And are you seeing certain platforms? Are you invested in that space? Are you looking at it? What's your feeling there?
Yeah, we've been investing for quite a long time in the social virtual conferencing collaboration space. With this new partnership with Engage, clearly we're looking to partner with Premier Events to bring virtual large-scale events to life through the partnership with Engage, and many other solutions that we're discussing with. You will hear the background noise of the new reality of working from home.
Yeah.
So yes, the answer is yes. We've been investing even before this started, but this further sort of reinforced that thesis, and we continue to invest and partner into the space in hopes of providing a cohesive and seamless experience combining different platforms and solutions.
Yeah, interesting. So question that I knew I was going to ask, and I don't want to hear the answer, but Ondrej Bach on Facebook is asking, is location-based VR dead for venture capitalists? Yeah, I know. And so what's your thought on location-based VR before and after the pandemic? Who wants to take that one? Angelo, you gave the big groan, so let's start with you.
I gave the loudest sigh. So, my perspective on LBE a couple of years ago is like, it's too expensive. I did all this mystery shopping at various occasions. I saw so many people just kind of like walk in, walk out, like, oh, I can't afford it, right? Because they're making whatever. And it's, relatively expensive. And then a couple of companies, like, really, I thought hit it out of the ballpark and did a fantastic job. And like, it was everything from like the content they were producing to like their staff. And they just gave people great experiences. Of course, when I came to this realization, those companies weren't raising money. So it never quite worked out for me to take a bet in the LBE space. But of course, now I want to say, like, well, obviously no one saw this coming. So I think a couple of companies really hit it out of the ballpark, or were doing exceptionally well pre-pandemic. And I think, who knows what the organizational and corporate structure will be like of these two companies that I'm thinking about. But I think there's going to be a space for LBE. So I've done like a 180 on this. I'm not sure if it's ever going to be a unicorn company, but I think there's a shot at it. And there is a space for them, even if we're going to have, cheaper and lighter and better headsets at home. It's just kind of fun to go hang out and go to Alien Zoo or shoot some zombies or whatever activity you want to do. But I think you're just going to have to wait a year and a half, and it's just, it's not going to be pretty between now and then.
Yeah. Do you want to call out what companies you're thinking of, or
I thought
Dreamscape?
Dreamscape, right, did a wonderful job, and I think Sandbox did a really nice job. And it's really just like little things from like literally all the operators I had interacted with were just like on top of it, even though they were not making $100,000 a year. They really were passionate and cared about it and made sure everyone had a good time, right? Which just bumps up your net promoter score, gets you the recurring revenue. And then, you see it flowing through the bottom line. And I won't name the example companies that I saw that, like, wow, like these operators are just horrible. Like, I wish the CEO knew. And I told a couple of CEOs and, trying to help them. So,
Yeah. Anybody else have a position on location-based VR?
I was just going to say the closest that I agree with Angelo. I think there were some really promising standout experiences, and it's probably going to be a while before honestly we get back to most in-person physical experiences, and location-based VR just being one of many examples. But I recently tried Adventure Lab, and it's the closest to a location-based experience I've experienced at home, which is somewhat counterintuitive, but it hits on a lot of, I think, the drivers of what got people excited about LBE, and it's very, very social, and it has a live host. So even though you're not all in the same physical location, it just reinforces that shared experience and a live experience. So, you're not interacting with a bot, you're not on a script. It's really unique each time that you go through the experience, and you're sharing that with friends. And I think that's a big part of what is appealing about LBE. And so I'm impressed with what they're doing. And because they are direct to consumer, you can try that out at home today and have kind of a proxy LBE experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Adventure Labs really take a very unique approach, and I would say, compared to all the other LBEs, it's one of a kind, right? There's nothing else that does what they does, so it's very unique, and I really enjoy that experience as well. So I think from what I say that it's in the short term, it's definitely a huge hit to any LBE business, right? No questions about that. But if we think about what is a core value proposition of a LBE business, right? So we can think of a few things: the brand, the content, and the community, right? And I think brand, content, and community, all three things can be replicated in a digital way as well, right? So right now, I see a number of LBE companies and brands. They are kind of shifting their content from a physical world type of strategy into a digital strategy at this point, and they are leveraging their community and their reputation that they have accumulated through these physical retail stores, and leveraging this reputation and this resource in this online platform as well. So I think it's an interesting transformation, and I think depending on how this pandemic, how long it's gonna impacting all of us, having a digital transformation in this case will hedge the risk of if the pandemic is going on for a long time.
Yeah, Pearly, you guys had a big early move into arcades with Viveport Arcade. What's your internal feelings about that market right now?
Viveport Arcade took a little bit of a different approach from some of the other arcade operators or solutions that we are familiar with. It was meant to be a easy to access tool for any small business owners to open up VR access in their communities to show VR to people. So it was really more strategic than an arcade business. And of course, it's steadily growing. It's been steadily growing until this happened clearly, and it's provided that easy to access tool, free to download, free to service, easy to license commercial content for their community. Ultimately, looking at LBE investment, for me, it's always about the matrix. You have to make the numbers work, right? The revenue per square foot and the repeated replayability, the economics for the operator needs to make sense. And for a lot of the solutions that we've looked at, they don't necessarily make sense, right? To be able to scale in a sustainable way. But you would see some of the top performers like the Hologates of the world or the Fence there. They have found a way that provides that kind of matrix and scale for their operators. Of course, they would need to be adapting in this environment, and they seem to doing some of that. And then we see some other operators like Spaces trying to pivot into virtual conferencing space as an example. So everyone definitely needs to adapt. But even before the pandemic, the ROI, the matrix, has always been the tricky part in looking at investments into this space, and that continues to be the case. Even so, more so. So transitioning to digital, especially transitioning to digital and from home type of engagement, there's a lot of new opportunities, but also a good weight, I think, for a lot of those that were struggling to reset.
Yeah, great point. So, what are the areas that you guys would like to see more opportunities in? Like, is there something you're hankering for somebody to bring you on an investment side or an opportunity side, or you feel there's an unmet need or an opportunity that there's not enough people focusing on?
Well, I certainly think there's more opportunity than ever in the collaboration space, as a couple of people have mentioned already. And there's some specific, having recently organized some VR events and been testing out a lot of different things, there's certainly a lot we're learning right now as these platforms are becoming more popular and the volume of people flocking to them is increasing. And so I think there's just some sort of basic logistical challenges there and technical challenges that still need to be solved. But what I'd really love to see is some out-of-the-box thinking in, a lot of what we're doing now in these kind of early phases of VR development is replicating what we see in the real world. So we'll take a conference and we build what looks like a conference in the real world in VR. And I'd love to see some more experimenting on just completely forgetting that template and imagining, what could a conference look like if anything was possible? Because we now have this infinite canvas on which we can, build some really unique experiences. And I think that's the next level that we'll start seeing, particularly when some of those early technical challenges get solved.
Yeah, I think there's a nature, like I've been reflecting recently on web. I'm old enough to remember Web 1.0, and it was basically we all took our brochures and turned them into web pages because that's all we could really think about, and the tools weren't really there yet to be able to take it to 2.0 and 3.0. And so I've been curious to what the next versions of that are going to be. Anybody else have some areas where you'd like to see more opportunity?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I like to see a few things. First of all, I like to see more deals that's solving problems in the virtual being space, right? Digital humans and virtual influencers, and especially since everybody is living a digital lifestyle these days, so sometimes relationship with real people versus like relationship with virtual people, and if you are following an influencer, whether it's real or whether it's virtual, sometimes things are blending in multiple different ways, right? And also virtual being are a convergence point of different new technologies. Not only VR, AR, but also artificial intelligence can power can power the virtual human beings, and also companies in the blockchain space are building digital identity systems that can also view into the virtual beings, and also with the emerging of the whole esports ecosystem, right? Virtual beings are also playing a very vital part in that ecosystem as well. So that's one thing. The other thing I like to see is more products and more solutions on healthcare and digital wellness, right? So how can people leverage platforms like VR, AR to incentivize people to care more about their health, to keep a very healthy lifestyle, to exercise at home, right? So I think these are very practical questions that need to be solved as of today and people, and there has been a number of companies working on this, working from this sector that has been seeing a lot of tractions these days. Last, I like to see more companies that's building platforms for the metaverse, right? If we think about like any type of metaverse platform, from Second Life to like World of Warcraft, and today we have like Fortnite, that's positioned as the next metaverse. But what about metaverse in the future, right? What if we talk about what is a metaverse that there are millions of people using on a daily basis 5 years, 10 years down the road, right? I think right now is a great opportunity for people to build a really cross-platform type of metaverse that regardless of what kind of device you have, regardless of what kind of where you are in the world, you can always be anywhere, be whoever, and do whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I think with this digital lifestyle thing going on, it's a natural introduction to that lead to the metaverse opportunity, and I think people who are working on this problem today will be the major players 5 years and 10 years down the road.
So do you guys think, so Jay asked a question on Facebook, and I'm going to stay with the metaverse question for a bit around whether this, this concept is going to be built, like, so Mozilla Hubs is basically Mozilla saying this needs to be built in the web, where everybody else is kind of building more closed systems on the internet. How do you guys view that? And is there an opportunity for an early stage, because you guys are mostly early stage investors, right? Is there an opportunity for an early stage company to compete with Facebook Horizons and Unreal Engine and Fortnite, or is that just a Don Quixote dream?
I think there is. So from my perspective, if we look into the development process of a metaverse, right? So metaverse is like a grand vision, but underneath the grand vision, there is a product, right? You need to start with a product. So what kind of problem does this product solve? And how can you leverage this product and leverage the community and the social dynamic you create with this product and pivot into a metaverse, right? So, all the metaverse start with a product. And in the case of Fortnite, or in the case of World of Warcraft, right? So the product is a game, right? It's a game that brings the community together and provide use cases and provide value to the users, right? So today, there are many different angles that we can look into to bring people together, right? We can look into the social aspect, right? We can look into the collaboration aspect, right? We can even look into, for example, education aspect, as Pearly just mentioned, right? There has been a lot of new development in how we can introduce new type of education to the kids and to the younger generation, right? So if we can figure out a way to have a product and get everybody to start using this product, and get everybody get familiar with this new consumer behavior, right? It laid down the foundation of a product that is well positioned to pivot into a metaverse in the future. Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, it all started with a product.
And so basically, you're saying there's lots of different vectors or on ramps onto that, and my guess is you're going to have multiple metaverses that all wind up connecting and merging at some point at a higher level. And so, are you seeing anybody out there that you can talk about that's on the right, you think is on the right path to this beyond just the big companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of them. Companies like Rec Room or VR Chat or Offspace has been on the trajectory of being some of the default place for, especially for VR community to hang out, right? And these are all startups. There are also emerging platforms like Engaged, which is a little bit more focused on education that is, building a very healthy ecosystem around virtual gathering and sharing information, pass on knowledge, and making meaningful connections. And there are also companies like Sumnum Space, right? They are building a virtual a metaverse, but they are enabling virtual transactions backed by their blockchain technology, right? So they are selling the land, and people can customize their land, and people can do transactions on top of the virtual ecosystem that they are building. So different companies are building different products. I even heard about some company that's trying to build some interoperability between different metaverses. So if you have one avatar in one metaverse, you can kind of teleport into another metaverse, but keeping your avatar and keeping your social profile. So I think there are all kinds of imagination we can think about there. But people are, at the end of the day, we need to take baby steps before we can lift up. And I think right now is a good time to start taking the baby steps and start to collect all the early tractions at this point.
So would you guys advise a company thinking about raising money in this environment? Is that because you want to have a big end goal, right? You need to have a big vision for your business. And is that a trajectory that you think companies should be thinking about? Like, obviously we've got a product today, and maybe it's a remote collaboration product, but from a strategy standpoint, should they be thinking about and starting to weave a story around how do we get to become a player in the metaverse? Or how would you look at that? Would you be like, oh, that sounds like bullshit? Or like, what are you looking for? Because people that are watching the show are going to be like, all right, I'm going to need to raise some money at some point for my business, whether it's today or in the future. How do you see that? Should they all be thinking about that? Or is that just, I don't know.
I think all investors are excited by big visions. We all want to be excited by the founders' big visions, feeling like they're taking a bold stance on a problem that none of us have thought of before. So that big vision is definitely very important in creating the excitement and the reason to believe in betting on founders early. But that being said, clearly your near-term revenue model needs to exist. Your product market fit needs to be there. You need to provide a path to that ultimate big vision. I think that applies to businesses small and big, but most definitely in the riskier early stage investments.
Yeah, and we're going to have a vaccine eventually, right? A year and a half down the road. And I think the metaverse, from a technological perspective, the size of the lenses, the comfort, the pass-through capabilities, et cetera, we're a ways away from people being able to kind of, put on a pair of goggles for, 10 or 12 hours comfortably. So I wouldn't hang a hat on this and say this is going to be my exit in 5 years. You can't, the pandemic, we're not going to be sheltering in place, I don't hope, right, in a year and a half.
Yeah, hopefully. What are the challenges? Like, so when people come to you with decks or pitches or whatever, what are some of the big mistakes you see them make, and what's top advice of what to do or not to do when formulating their investor pitch?
I think
so many different mistakes. Okay.
Yeah. I was going to say this is kind of a classic one, but I do think it's important for entrepreneurs to do a bit of research before approaching a given investor, and it doesn't have to be hours worth of stalking by any means. In fact, you can certainly go overboard with that, but doing a bit of background, understanding what we invest in, understanding what our portfolio looks like, and being able to target the pitch accordingly. And a really simple and obvious example for us is we get a fair amount of decks from all male teams. And, it's just, that's a pretty obvious part of our brand and thesis that we are looking for the gender diverse teams. And to me, that's just an obvious indicator that they're just kind of, spraying that deck out to everyone, and they haven't really looked into why we would or wouldn't be a good fit. And so just that bit of background research ahead of time goes a long way in catering the pitch accordingly.
For me, it's a lot about this actual substance, we all reach thousands of decks all the time, and we are very used to seeing a lot of hyped up attraction and a lot of logos with nothing there or not a lot of substance, and it's very easy for investors to see through that. So I think what I appreciate most in founders is being honest with where they stand in terms of their product, their commercial progress, their partnership status, what the truth really is. We hear a lot of pompous or overhyping of situations and partnerships that are just a big minus on credibility immediately. I think that's a big mistake that some founders easily make, especially for the first impression. I think that's something to avoid, to be really truthful in where you are versus pumping it up and over-exaggerate things.
Yeah, somebody just posted a comment, and maybe you can take this, Angelo, because you're going to talk, but don't talk about the product in the investor pitch, rather focus on the customer and the problem the startup solves. How do you guys feel about that?
I think people overemphasize sometimes their product, right? They just fall in love with it so much they don't pay attention to anything else, and they'll have like 2 or 3 pages on just the product, and it's like, stop! Like, what? Let's say someone's never made an investment in the XR space, right? You kind of need to tell a story, and lots of people will tell you how to tell the story, right? But like, what's the market size? What is the problem? What is your solution? Why are you better than the competition? What's your business unit economics? What's your go-to-market? What's your team? And it's like, and how we're going to use the money. It's pretty straightforward. So people really sometimes just talk about their baby and don't kind of consider the bigger context in which is operating, in which we're assessing companies.
Yeah. I want to, Pearly, before you go, Ryan, one of the things you talked about is being realistic. And one of the things I loved about Sandbox's pitch that Andreessen showed on their YouTube channel was how they led with the negative. And I thought that was just a really bold but authentic and honest approach that obviously worked for them. Do you see any of that out there, or was that really a unique approach?
No, absolutely. No, I definitely see founders who are very realistic and pragmatic, and that definitely scores credibility points and in us, increasing the willingness to continue to engage. If you know that you can trust what a founder is saying. So I think that substance is really, really important in engaging with the investor. And I lost my train of thought on the other point I wanted to make. But
sorry, Ryan, you were going to jump in, and maybe Pearly will get her thought back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, basically one of the common issues that I see when I listen to the pitches is that there are so many reference to like, by year like 2025 or what time VRER will be such a big market, right? I think, the whole VRER being a big market, the statement itself is a vision, right? And as entrepreneurs, we should not confuse vision with facts, right? So it may happen, it may not happen. And I still remember like when I started investing in the VRAR sector 5 years ago, there has been a lot of people talking about like by year 2020, VRAR will become what kind of market, right? So I think, the right way of think about this problem as an entrepreneur is that what kind of problem can you solve today? How can you deliver value today, right? And also to the vision that we were talking about, right? What is the path to that vision? And what's your contribution to that path, right? What can you do to make that thing a reality, right? So it's kind of like, don't ask what the XR industry can do for you. Ask what you can do for the industry, right? How can you make changes and how can you make impact? And I think, those kind of questions are exactly what make the fact that being in the XR industry is an exciting thing. And living through this time is an exciting timing as well.
Yeah.
You see this a lot with AR companies, right? Sometimes just like, okay, not all our customers are going to have HoloLenses or Magic Leaps or whatever. So they're actually meeting customers where they are and saying like, hey, you could do this on a phone or a tablet, right? So it's just like, don't wait for your fantastic world that's not going to be around for 5 or 10 years. Actually just meet your customer needs and appreciate you're doing this problem solving via a tool, which happens to be ARVR, which we all love, but it can't just be the end all and be all just for itself.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
one of
I
the
remember what I wanted to say.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pearly. Go.
No, I just wanted to say on the understanding of your competition landscape, competitive landscape. As Angelo said, it's a very straightforward process. A few points that you need to make to go through a coherent pitch. But I often see founders fumble in the competitive landscape part. They don't understand their competition. They have very shallow or surface understanding what their competition actually does. And for us, it's very easy to tell that if you actually don't know how you position versus the rest of the market in competition, then you don't really know what game you're up against. So I would say go deep into understanding what your competitors are doing. So yeah, as like an investor would, even wearing an entrepreneur hat, building something competitive.
Yeah, I can't tell you. Yeah, I run workshops on go-to-market strategy, and I can't tell you how many companies I've gone to who haven't tried any of their competitors' products. Like they haven't even tried them, and I'm like I know more about your competition than you do. How is what? Maybe that does make sense because that's all I do is travel around and try VR. But yeah, shocking to me how widespread that is.
Yeah, I actually broke it.
I'm sorry, Angela.
Oh, I mean, I actually ask all the people I start taking semi-seriously, like, don't give me a 2x2 on your competition. Tell me the 5 or 6 top competitors. Tell me the 5 or 6 purchase criteria, and tell me how you stack up against them, right? And I do this basically, so I learn, but it's also like, do you have an honest and realistic assessment of all the things that are going to affect your purchase process and your customer journey, and your product market fit? Like, if you don't know who some of your customers are or your competitors are, it's just like, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the earlier questions came up around how you guys feel about some of the things that the bigger companies, and I'll focus on Facebook, with what they're doing and the billion people in VR and live maps and recreating a digital version of the world and some of the history of Facebook and some of the things they've done with Cambridge Analytica, et cetera, et cetera. What are some of the darker sides of VR that you guys are concerned about? And what opportunities might there be? Ryan, you talked about blockchain and avatar security, which I think is a big one that I'm looking for somebody doing some space in that area. What's the shadow side of VR, and what are the opportunities you see for companies to be able to step into that and solve some of those problems?
Yeah, I think one of the common issue we see especially in a social VR environment is the standard for social behavior, right? Because VR AR is a very immersive and sometimes very intimate situation, and when you are in a social VR environment, the way on how you behave can make an impact to the people around you. Right. So there are many details into this problem, like how you talk and where you stand when you are talking to other people, and what kind of behavior should be encouraged and what kind of behavior should not be encouraged. Right. So I think at this point, a number of social VR platforms have introduced some a standard and guideline towards a well-behaved social behavior in the VR settings. But I think this kind of knowledge need to be passed to a wider audience, so that everyone, when they are entering into a new virtual world, they understand that their impact can be hurtful to other people, and they should be care about their behavior just like how they care about their behavior in the physical world.
Yeah, so we need like a virtual boarding school to send people through so they learn.
Yeah, some kind of guidelines. I think most people, as long as they are using their common sense, it's good enough. But at the same time, what we have seen in the gaming industry, for example, there are a lot of like bullying in the esports world, and people are kind of shit talking each other, and it's just not very good behavior, and it can be hurtful to the people. around you. So I think, in VR, it's actually taking the sensitivity to a brand new level. And especially for people who haven't spent a long time in that virtual world, they need to understand that their behavior may have a consequence on the other people.
Yeah, interesting.
Another big concern I see is just the amount of information, right? Once you get eye tracking and cognitive and emotional and other things from people when they're wearing their headset, it's not voluntary. It's like, oh, you have a concussion, or you're going to develop Parkinson's, or these are things that are still being developed. And these can be used for tremendous good and benefit when you're having training for someone, or if you want to do a physical health checkup for somebody. But you can imagine the invasions of privacy that can happen if people and companies aren't, appropriate stewards of people's information.
Yeah. I know we're running a little late because we got started late. If anybody needs to peel off, I appreciate you being here, but don't be shy. But I want to at least finish this circle of questions and give people an opportunity to say one last thing. Go ahead, Martina. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say, and I think in addition to some of the privacy concerns about the information that's being gathered, there's also a concern around just, the beautiful thing about VR is how visceral it is and how real it can feel. But the dark side of that is that can invoke trauma, and that if people don't necessarily understand the experience and the content they're about to view, and if it's violent or has some kind of sexual content or something that could really hurt a person's psyche or bring up past trauma, that is felt far more viscerally and deeply in VR than it would be in another medium. And so creators need to be really intentional about providing some kind of guidance ahead of time about what the content will be, and getting consent for those experiences that are potentially traumatic for certain people.
And maybe some sort of better, more intuitive filtering systems for people to, I think we've developed over decades, rating systems and stuff, and I think none of that yet is available in the VR space. So where, again, like an example, applying the old ratings to the new system, and there's very different impact, as you've said. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Yeah, Pearly, any final words from you on this or anything?
Nothing specific to this question to add. No.
So any last words from anybody? What advice do you give people? And how do they? Are you open to outreach? And if so, how do they get in touch with you guys?
I'm going to echo what Pearly said. Oh, yes.
Go ahead. Yes, always looking for founders to work with.
We're all looking for, exactly. We're all looking for smart, interesting people that we could help and work with and be mutually beneficial to each other. I'm very easy to reach, angelo@hp.com. If I think there's a fit, I will respond to you. So I would just say, please think about your solution and say this makes sense for HP or HTC or Ryan or Christina and Amy, right? It's just think about what you're doing, and we'll try to give it some thought and respond.
Yeah, you can reach us on Twitter or through the website, and I'm Martina at WXR Fund, and we are always looking for new companies, and I think now is as good as time as any to jump in and start building. I think that's always my advice for prospective founders, is just start building, start experimenting, and now you might have the time to do so even more than previously. So I hope I know we will see some really fantastic, unique companies emerge from this, and I'd encourage anyone listening to consider themselves someone who could build that. And
build a diverse team along the way, because you'll get a better result.
Yeah. For me, Ryan at outpostvc.com, and definitely echoing what Angelo and Martina just mentioned. We are looking for talented people to work with, and we love new ideas and new opportunities, right? And I think this pandemic could be a double-edged sword. It can make a lot of things worse, but it's also a great timing for a lot of other things, right? So let's leverage that situation, and I welcome many conversations as well.
Awesome. Well, if anybody needs help getting in touch, you can always get me at vrbob@bobcooney.com. And if you need some help figuring out how to position your deck before you send it off, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I've raised a little bit of money in my career. Guys, I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing for the industry, taking the time to educate people. This is a big, raising money is a big piece of the puzzle for any entrepreneur. And you guys are all doing foundational work for the community and for entrepreneurs. And, that's my passion is I know how hard entrepreneurs work. And they sacrifice so much to have their visions come to reality. And without the support of you guys and people like you, it wouldn't be possible. So I hope you guys all stay safe, stay well. I hope you all make shit tons of money in the coming years for you and your investors. And I will see everybody on Friday where we're going to be talking about some of the stuff that Ryan talked about. We're going to be talking about VR fitness. Interviewed the people at the VR Health Institute and some of the work they're doing, which is fascinating. And I'm going to bring to you an interview I did with Doug Griffin at Loom.ai, which is doing AI-powered avatars. So you did a great commercial for my Friday show, Ryan. I appreciate it. And Kylie's signaling to me
Next week
that and he's got some really interesting insights. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for your questions out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, again. I look forward to seeing you in real life at some point soon. I'll be doing a big virtual hug. Can we do a big is that okay? Virtual hugs are safe, right? All right, cool. So,
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.